This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now.
Indeed it does. Hello, everybody. Tim Powers sitting in today. It is Wednesday, March the 4th, the day after the big announcement that Bay du Nord is moving to a new stage, one that brings it closer to becoming a reality. We're going to talk a lot about that, I suspect, this morning, get a lot of different perspectives from all angles on that story. Gotta start, though, with the language Tony Wakeham used, eerily reminiscent of what Brian Peckford said in the 1980s about the Newfoundland offshore, and that, of course, was not coincidental. Brian Peckford said, "Someday the sun will shine, and the have-not will be no more." Last night, Mr. Wakeham said, "The sun is shining on our offshore, because cannot will be no more." I don't know if we're into the no more stage, but we're certainly into the no more rhetoric and hyperbole. And I can understand why the Premier would want to use that and the industry would want to use that, because for the last number of years, it's been a difficult patch for our oil patch. It is fascinating to see that language and the comparison that Mr. Wakeham is drawing to Premier Peckford, because it was Premier Peckford and John Crosbie, then the federal cabinet minister for Newfoundland and Labrador, and Brian Mulroney's government, who brought the Atlantic Accord to Newfoundland and Labrador. And that Atlantic Accord set the pathway forward for the province to properly benefit from any offshore development that was going to happen. And we've seen that benefit over the course of many different years, from Hibernia, Hebron, and potentially to Bay du Nord and the other fields that are out there. How are you feeling about all of this today? Love to get your perspective. Look, we'll get industry perspective, we'll get union perspective, we'll get political perspective. But what are you feeling? Do you feel optimistic? Are you guardedly cautious about it? Is there pessimism? Is this yet another one of those big Newfoundland and Labrador announcements held at dinner time that doesn't deliver? It's too early to tell that, and I certainly don't want to be cynical. I want to be optimistic. That is my nature. But I want to hear how you're feeling about this. There's lots of elements to this, and we'll go through them, as I say, on the show. Certainly, if you're a government, you're very excited that this has come to fruition. Global circumstances are clearly working in your favor at the moment because of the many things we've been talking about this week. Uncertainty about oil supply in the world, because of what's happening in the Middle East, because of what happened in Venezuela. Canadian energy looks more palatable. It did anyway prior to that, but it is enhanced now. I won't go through all the details of the announcement. We'll go through them throughout the program, but it could mean up to $6.4 billion in revenue for the province in the first phase of the project, and that money, it would seem, along with other incoming revenue, would help fuel some of the service provisions that Premier Wakeham and his ministers promise in healthcare and policing. I know there's a debate about how much topsides work is going to happen in the province, and is Premier Wakeham not fulfilling a promise to have a debate about this or living up to the right number? We'll talk about that. What about the issue of the dry dock? Of course, there was an MOU with North Atlantic that they were going to get Bull Arm. That was done in June of 2025, I believe. The government's now taking that back. Canceling the MOU. North Atlantic doesn't seem to be too off-put by that. We'll try and talk with them today, because the government also argued in this announcement that there's a pent-up demand for dry dock services, and they hope to cash in on that. Who's going to run that? How's that all going to work? Are we going to take an equity share? Listen, as somebody who's involved in many businesses and has equity shares in businesses, there are benefits and there are risks. We need to hear more about that. what is the federal government going to do? The Premier was very praiseworthy of Prime Minister Carney last night. He certainly has spoken to the Prime Minister about this, as the Premier has told us before. Currently, Beta Nord is not on the immediate list of, or the initial list as it's called, of major projects. It was on the long list, as I recall. But the Premier says they're looking to designate it as a project of national significance. What does that mean? Well, for years, one of the challenges of developing the offshore oil industry in Newfoundland and Labrador has been the regulatory burden, specifically the length of time and the different environmental reviews you have to go through. According to the legislation that the current Prime Minister brought in last spring, the purpose is to harmonize all of this and make it happen faster. Do you believe we're going to see oil in 2031? Do you believe the final investment decision is going to come in the next year or so? We'll talk about all of that today. That's probably our big talker. But we're not going to forget some other things. St. Clair's in the news. You may have heard Russell and Jerry Lynn this morning. They were playing the debate between Health Minister Lila Evans and Lisa Dempster, the opposition MHA, yesterday about why the government had chosen not to refurbish why the government had chosen to refurbish St. Clair's over build a new clinic. This, of course, goes back to a story we talked about yesterday where we had a caller mention something that had been pointed out previously, that there had been a patient in St. Clair's who'd been basically living in a wind tunnel when he was getting treatment there, and the window was broken and it was freezing. He had 7 blankets. The building's a mess. I've been to St. Clair's a bunch of times, and I have seen that in the past. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the weather. Snow. It's there all again. How are we going to get out of this winter? It has been one for the ages. You may have heard Sarah in the news talk about snow clearing costs, not that far off what we experienced in Snowmageddon, and it is only March 4th. We do know we get pounded in March with weather in Newfoundland and Labrador. So you want to talk about the weather, have a rant, I'm here for you to do that. The Brier, both our Newfoundland teams are in action this morning. Nathan Young is playing Saskatchewan, I believe. Brad Gouju is playing PEI. Brad Gouju sits at 5-0, tied with Brad Jacobs in their pool. Nathan Young is 3-3, so he's still in the game. No doubt we may have a few listeners drift off at 9:30 when they hit the ice, but stay with us or turn us on down there. Happy to get updates from anybody who's down at the Mary Brown Center about what's happening in the Montana's Brier. We'll talk about that. Trying to track down Mayor Mark Andrews. I've talked to Mark a couple of times about the Bruce 2 Arena. You'll remember in a storm earlier, the arena got pretty beaten up. They were hoping to get it back on track. Now they've had more hurdles thrown their way. The Bruce 2 Arena is a big central place of activity in the Port-au-Port Peninsula in Port-au-Basque. It's where everybody goes to pursue their different sports loves, be it curling or hockey or fitness. And those sorts of facilities, when they get banged up, those are big things. Why is it taking so long? I feel for the people of Port-au-Basque. I feel for Mark. He has been out front and center trying to raise awareness and get this problem solved. So we'll see if we can talk to him. We'll also, later on in the program, delighted that my friend and colleague, I sometimes sit in for her nationally, Vashi Kapelis, is going to join us at about 10:30 to talk a little bit about what's going on with the Prime Minister on his foreign trip, what's happening with Pierre Poilievre on his foreign trip, Iran, what's going on there, where Canada is. The Canadian government is moving around on its position after initially supporting unconditionally the U.S. attacks on Iran and the Israeli attacks on Iran. Canada's kind of in a place where it's saying, yeah, we still support the attacks. We weren't consulted. We wish maybe they were more in line with international law. Some criticism coming the Prime Minister's way about lacking moral clarity. How do you feel about that? Do you want to talk about that? How's that impacting him? Pierre Poilievre's been in London. He's going to Germany. I believe he's in Germany now, trying to brandish his international credentials. How are you feeling about all of that? We can talk about whatever you want, but I believe I have a caller who wants to talk about something very pertinent, and immediately important. Oh, okay, sorry. All right, well, I don't have a caller, but I have a caller with a question, as Beth whispered in my ear. Amos wants to know if House Food Bank is closed due to impending weather. Amos, I do not know, but we've put it out there. If there's somebody from the House Food Bank. Boy, I'm really screwing it up there. So the Amos House Food Bank is closed. Amos isn't the caller. Thank you, Beth. That is me screwing it up. Amos House Food Bank is closed due to impending weather. So if you use Amos Food Bank, be aware that you won't be able to avail of its services today. So that is an important update for you. Oh, here's one. If you're in the provincial civil service, apparently you don't have to worry about public sector layoffs. Now, that is very different. The Premier has said this. Our news is reporting it, because that is not the path apparently the government of Newfoundland and Labrador is going. Now, that's very different from what is happening in Nova Scotia. That is very different than what has happened in Canada, where the Carney government is slicing the size of the public service significantly. It grew to over 300,000 employees. That's been the source of much consternation. But if you're a Newfoundland and Labrador public servant, you probably are going to be okay. How do you feel about that? Whether you're in the public service or not, long has been the criticism in Newfoundland and Labrador that our public service, like other public services, and the criticisms they receive, has been too large. This criticism goes back, well, just about to every premier, but during the Williams government, there was criticism that of the Premier Williams and his team, that they let the public service grow. Nobody really worked to bring it down afterwards. Premier VOCM is arguing that we need people in these positions to help serve you. The other argument that doesn't get stated as often but is very real is these people all have good jobs. They pay taxes. They spend money in the communities in which they live, largely in St. John's, but they do live across the province. And if you take them out of work, you create other economic pressures. What do you think of that? Do you want to talk about that? Do you think that is something you would like to see action on, or are you fine? Are you fine that the public sector is staying the way it is? Other thing I want to flag, I just want to go back to the environmental issues around Beta Nord. We are probably going to have the Sierra Club on the program today. Now, that may not be everybody's cup of tea, but there are certainly people in Newfoundland and Labrador and across the country who still very much don't support the ongoing development, let me choose that word, ongoing development of the offshore oil and gas industry. They have legitimate concerns about climate change. Now, the argument, of course, with Newfoundland and Labrador's offshore is that our oil emits less than others. That has been a long-standing argument. I believe it is borne out, in fact. But if you would like to offer a different perspective on Beta Nord going forward, you can do it here safely. I'm not going to harangue you. I want to hear your point of view. Others may go after it. Certainly there is an appetite for our oil and gas, and it is going to be developed. But there are people who have a very different view on that. I want to hear that here too. So all voices are welcome. We're going to take a break here. When we come back, your calls here on VOCM's Open Line.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
So let's get into this agreement while we're waiting for you to call. What does it entail? Agreements on life and field benefits, royalties, and an equity option, important word, option, have been reached with partners Equinor and BP. It says the first standalone offshore oil and gas development since Hebron, and its first deepwater project. Yeah, if I read that correctly, 1,200 meters deep. That is not insignificant. We know the project was paused in 2023, and 3 years later, here is where we are. The agreement, according to the VOCM government, exceeds what was negotiated in 2018 and will provide up to $6.4 billion, up to, not guaranteed, but up to $6.4 million in direct revenue to the provincial government in the first phase of the project. It doesn't spell out the timelines there because obviously the project needs to start first, and we don't know what period that encapsulates. Going further into the agreement, it says the project is the first life of field benefits agreement for an oil and gas project, which ensures a focus on benefits throughout the life of the project and not just during development. That probably requires a little bit more translation, but the translation that is given here is this will result in over 31 million person-hours of work over 25 years. That, I suspect, will be spelled out over time, but we will dig and see what that actually could and will mean, because you got to get through kind of the lofty jargon here. The government goes on to say, expressions of interest have been issued for construction work in Newfoundland and Labrador, including topsides components, an important step to ensuring local resources and expertise are fully utilized. Now, some of the early reporting on this has the opposition saying that this is not what the Premier VOCM had talked about when he was in opposition, that there was a specific metric on how much topside work there would be. We will dig into that, and of course, the Premier is welcome to call. The government of Newfoundland and Labrador is welcome to call, as is the opposition, to walk us through this. The agreement, going through what is here, represents a commitment to fabricate a minimum of 90% of subsea components in Newfoundland and Labrador. 95% of subsea components in Labrador, fabricating them. What does that specifically mean? What type of manufacturing? Again, we hear all these terms. We want to drive down and understand. Going to the equity option. An equity option gives the provincial government a seat at the table and a piece of future growth. Let me tell you about those and how they work. Absolutely true. Depends on the size of the equity. Depends on who controls the voting at the table. There's a big difference between having a 2% piece of equity and a 50% piece of equity. If you are at the table, and they allow you to be at the table with 2% equity, and I don't know what the number is. I'm pulling 2% out of my head. I'm sure it's more than that if it were to be there. You might only be there to listen, not decide. Again, listening can be of value. Sometimes you need to have a minimum piece of equity to be able to sit at the table. So we want to dig more into that one, but I will say on the surface, it's certainly an option in any deal you want to make sure that you have. Now, this is where it gets interesting, and we're going to talk to Trades NL in a little bit. The agreement includes targets for employment of skilled trade apprentices. And what it says in those targets, 10% of construction and 15% of onshore operations. Employment of skilled trades apprentices, 10% for construction and 15% for onshore operations. Again, we'll get some more clarity, if we can, from Trades NL about this later on when they join us. Another part of the agreement, $200 million in fabrication funds will facilitate long-term fabrication jobs in the province, intended to expand the province's capacity for offshore and marine fabrication. So this is also add-on, the value add, if you will. This isn't just for the development of Beta Nord, as the province is arguing. This is for the ability to use it in the building of or restoration management of dry dock operations that they're hoping to reinvigorate in Bull Arm. So there's a lot in there. I'm going to give you some more, but it just disappeared from my screen as I'm doing that, so that's not super helpful. We can talk about that because I remembered it off the top of my head that Beta Nord, Bull Arm, there was an MOU, as I said in the beginning, with the company North Atlantic. The province is ending that or tearing up that MOU because they are going to take control of or retain control of Bull Arm so that they can try and get into the marine services business. So we'll see how all of that goes. There certainly is. I know this from working in the shipping industry or adjacent to the shipping industry. There is difficulty in finding space. And if Newfoundland and Labrador can take advantage of that, well, that is an important thing. So those are some of the key details that are there. I am still struck, though. I will say this. I am still struck by invoking the comparison of Brian Peckford. Look, Brian Peckford did a lot for Newfoundland and Labrador, but his record, like every politician in the province, is not without blemish. And more people tend to remember the latter days of Premier Peckford than the former days. But the phrase, it was immortal at the time, someday the sun will shine, the have-not will be no more, came around this time as we were changing the Newfoundland flag and the golden arrow. There's a whole generation of us who were growing up in the late 70s, early 80s when Premier Peckford was in power, who felt emboldened, felt energized by the rhetoric and the enthusiasm and the stance, the aggressive fighting Newfoundlander stance that he embraced at the time. Do you see some of that in Tony Wakeham? There is a big difference right off the bat. Premier Wakeham is not picking a fight with the Prime Minister. He, in fact, is going to support the Prime Minister in this particular effort. I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to get a different perspective. Now, we're joined by Connor Curtis. Connor is with the Sierra Club. Connor, you may have a different perspective on yesterday's announcement than people in Newfoundland and Labrador do. Tell us your perspective.
Sure. So, I tuned into the announcement. One thing that stands out to me in this is concern. Through the work that we do a lot of research on the future of oil and gas demand. And, the findings from the International Energy Agency still show a peak in oil demand around 2030 with the world transitioning to renewables. So when a project is proposed for 2031, first oil, given everything we have seen, given the research that shows there are already enough oil projects to meet that demand, that's extremely concerning for one thing, from an economics perspective for the province. And then the other side of that was, obviously during the announcement, it was going further than that. It was suggesting that there's a whole oil future past that that really doesn't exist in the economics of energy going forward past 2030.
But again, I'll respectfully challenge you a little bit. That report, I think, didn't contemplate, or did it, what's now happening in the Middle East? Did it contemplate China's appetite? Because those are the arguments, as you know, that you hear, and we're hearing them in Canada, justifying the need to continue with the production of oil and gas.
Yeah, so first of all, the IEA does look into, the U.S. impact on energy. That scenario really doesn't change under those conditions. In fact, what we're seeing in the Middle East right now, what we're seeing with the U.S.'s very erratic actions around energy, is, if anything, likely to accelerate the transition to renewables. Because when you think about it from the perspective of oil-consuming countries, right, they're watching Cuba be cut off from its supply of oil. They're watching the prices of oil fluctuate rapidly depending upon whatever chaotic decision the U.S. administration makes. That does not make oil a very reliable or stable source of energy. So if you can develop renewable energy locally, which they can, now with battery and grid solutions, it's very stable. It's already much cheaper than oil. Higher oil prices are going to actually make renewables even more competitive. That, if anything, is going to drive a faster renewable transition. And so it's important, again, to point out, like we're talking about an oil project here, first oil 2031, right? Right. That's years into the future. So, the impact of the crisis now is not going to be, there's a higher oil price in 2031, but it is definitely going to drive countries to consider expediting that renewable transition.
I hear you on the expediting, to use your word, to renewable, and certainly that still is part of the dialogue we hear. We don't often see it from G7 powers, but we are hearing it, and we certainly talked a lot about it in Newfoundland and Labrador around hydrogen, wind energy, and all of those things. What about climate change? Do you have concerns about climate change specifically as it relates to the potential development of Beta Nord in or around 2031?
Yeah, I mean, certainly from a climate perspective, I mean, there's always a lot of talk about green oil, but there really is no such thing because the problem with oil's emissions happens at the point of burning, not at the point of extraction. So the difference is quite negligible between, oil that's usually cast as green and not. Definitely there are concerns around climate change that continue to be a factor when we look at the impacts that Canada is experiencing in the form of more severe storms, more severe wildfires, Newfoundland and Labrador as well, experiencing these. And in fact, I did my MA degree on climate impacts in Newfoundland and Labrador, and the province is particularly exposed to climate change. So there is, I would argue a different route forward where we do explore alternative industries, renewable energy, try to meet the world where it's going to be very shortly by getting ahead of it. And in so doing also, contribute to emissions reductions and contribute to having a safer world that people will inherit as well.
Just want to pick up one thing from your press release because I haven't seen this argument elsewhere, but it's a fair argument to make. You're right. A decline in oil and gas revenue cannot be avoided no matter what actions are taken by the provincial and federal governments, including giving up $1 billion in taxes on highly profitable companies, Equinor and BP. I mean that is a point I've not heard invoked yet. It's a valid point. Why do you raise that?
I raise it for a reason, like the federal decision to essentially back Equinor to the tune of potentially $1 billion is not really a feather in the project's cap, right? If we talk about, there's a very profitable company, Equinor. If that's what's required to get them even to the point that they're still considering the project, to me, that's actually worrying. The other thing that, the other reason I bring it up is, we currently spend a huge amount in oil and gas subsidies at the provincial level, but also at the federal level. When there's two recent pieces of polling that have come out. One is by Abacus Data, which people will be familiar with, showing 79% of people in Newfoundland and Labrador associate themselves more with the idea of a renewable energy superpower than they do an oil and gas superpower. And another one that just came out, opinion polling, showed 58% of Canadians see the renewable energy transition as more important than ever. Only 11% say less. So there's an opportunity from an energy perspective to really invest money in, again, that future of energy rather than, I would argue, chasing oil and gas corporations that are already making, large profits and sort of continuously giving them the benefit of the doubt, but potentially wasting a lot of public money or subsidizing them heavily in order to try and make things work when it doesn't actually work out that way.
Just before I let you go, this is also interesting. I credit you guys for doing this, because often when people offer their perspective, they don't offer alternatives. You do offer some alternatives in your statement, and you talk about a long-term project in the conceptual phase, like Newfoundland and Labrador to the UK-EU electric transmission cable. Just talk about some of the alternatives that you see there that should be part of this discussion.
Yeah, so and this is where I want to stress with renewables, right? We need to start at that community level. So it's building out, the nice thing about them is they're scalable. So you start building them out and you keep increasing, you add storage, you meet local energy needs that might need to be met. You can look into ways to build out infrastructure that's going to need more energy. That also creates, maybe in the tech industry, another set of employment in the tech industry as well. And then you look at interties, right? So you're looking at, first and foremost, more interties to the rest of Canada, so we can be transporting energy from Newfoundland and Labrador, to food to the rest of Canada. But long term, and again, this is an interesting, we had them on a podcast to talk about that there are some people proposing the possibility of an interconnector basically to the UK and to the EU that would land in North America, which would be advantageous for a lot of reasons. It's further off, but again, if we start with those local interties, that really helps us build up to potentially much bigger projects.
All right, well, I appreciate your time and your perspective. As I say, important for all of us to hear all of the perspectives that are out there. Connor Curtis, Director of Communications, Sierra Club of Canada. Thanks, Connor.
Thank you.
All right, you've heard one perspective. I believe we have Trades NL coming up after the break. Stand by for more here on Open Line.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
The line's open, and we've got Bob Fiander. Bob, of course, is the Executive Director of Trades NL. Trades NL supported Premier Wakeham in the last election and the PC party then. Bob, how do you feel that support went?
Morning, Mr. Powers. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Great to have you.
I think... I guess the result is evident. The Premier certainly delivered significant news last night, and I can tell you when he was speaking there, my phone blew up with messages from people all across the province. So a lot of people very excited today in the province for sure.
Yeah, indeed, there is a huge excitement, and it's a wonderful thing to see. We've seen these excitements before, and some have materialized, others haven't, but this looks to be on the right path. Specifically, Bob, in this agreement, what would you point to that is good for the people you represent and skilled tradespeople in Newfoundland and Labrador?
For sure. Well, you can start with the minimum of 3 million fabrication hours dedicated to the subsea work that's going to be done in the province. 95% of that work to be performed in Newfoundland and Labrador. So our members have done that work before. They're highly skilled and experienced at it. The North Amist was done here in the province almost in its entirety, and they were skilled members of building trades that done that work. So we're looking forward to getting our hands on that and being involved. And of course, the floating dry dock, phenomenal announcement. It's a new industry for us. When you consider the amount of spending in defense right now, when that floating dry dock goes into operation, there will be millions of hours of work for tradespeople in the province. Better than that on the front end, it's going to be constructed in its entirety by unionized building trades members right in Bull Arm. So what's better than that?
Yeah, and just for look, I'm the son of an engineer and a construction guy. I have a modest understanding of fabrication, but so people understand, what does the fabrication work do? What kind of skilled workers are part of that? Is that welders? Who's part of fabrication work?
Well, I mean, you could have crane operators, boilermakers, pipe fitters, welders, instrumentation technicians, iron workers, painters, insulators, and the list goes on. So it's it's a broad stroke. It's going to affect a lot of different trades, and then again in the operations, it's going to balloon.
Okay.
So
No, so the criticism, as you know, today, that because there's always criticism, that's part and parcel of this game, and any announcement is there wasn't enough effort made by the VOCM government to secure topsides work and get a guarantee on topsides work. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think if you look back to the 2018 framework agreement, Tim, there was zero construction in that for the province, for anybody in the province, zero construction. So now the framework agreement, the 2018 framework agreement, is the only thing that we have to, I guess, to look at compared to what we're seeing here today. And what we're seeing here today, it's certainly much better than the 2018 framework agreement. Do we want to build modules in Newfoundland and Labrador? Absolutely we do. And our position going forward, we'll be looking to partner with government, strengthen benefit agreements, and this floating dry dock is going to put us in a really good position for more work. So I think the alternative right now at this point in time, we build that dry dock and we're into a new industry. We continue to look forward to some of the offshore installations in the future.
Bob, as it relates to labor supply, it seems to be a big issue everywhere. I mean, what challenges and opportunities do we have on that front? Do we have enough workers now? How long will it take to skill up workers? What's the opportunity for young people? Just speak to that if you can.
Sure. We do have enough workers right now because we're a little bit different than the rest of Canada. We've just come off of 3 major projects kind of in Hebron and LCP and Long Harbour, and a bunch of things going on in the refinery and across the province. But when those things started to close out, finish the jobs and everything, we were left then with a lot of unemployed skilled workers. And over that period of time where we stacked those projects, we had grown our membership. So we now have a good base of skilled workers. We got some time in front of us to skill up some apprentices and new people in the industry. So I think we're in a very good spot compared to the rest of Canada. We have a solid, highly skilled supply of labor here.
Last one for you, because again, I don't think, unless you're in the skilled laborers, you don't necessarily appreciate the opportunity economically that is there. But, you know, I realize it varies across trades, but, you know, if you're an 18, 19-year-old listening to our conversation today and you want to get into a skilled trade, what's the economic opportunity there? I mean, what can you make on a yearly basis? You know the questions, Bob. I get them all the time. How much am I going to make, buddy? What can you tell us about the range of compensation there?
Well, I mean, first of all, our wage classifications from our negotiated, unionized collective agreements set the stage for that. So they're competitive in the province right now. Depending on the project, whether it's commercial or industrial, that varies what type of money you can make. But they're all good paying jobs, and the amount of hours that you work on jobs makes a difference and things like that. But I mean, there's no problem right now in the commercial industry. You're over $100,000 in the trades, and then if you're on projects, depending on the hours you work, you could be in the $150,000 range. No problem.
Yeah, that's why this is a big deal, right? That's the human side of this. These are good jobs. And as you point out, the potential is that some of these jobs may last for a very long time. Very last question for you. What does it mean for Newfoundland now to have control again of Bull Arm and have the opportunity to do a lot of the dry dock work there? Is that also an added bonus of this deal?
Is it ever? We're revitalizing Bull Arm. You heard the government are going to immediately look to start remediation on the site for the things that are going to come. And then just kind of leaning back to the dry dock again, outside of the Navy opportunities, if we really have vision here, we make sure that the floating dry dock is wide enough so that it can accommodate an FPSO. Right now, we know that the FPSOs offshore, the Terra Nova and the Sea Rose, are around 46 meters wide. We don't know what the Beta Nord is right now, but we do know that the Johan Castberg FPSO out of Norway, Equinor owned, is about 55 meters wide. So you only get one shot at making that floating dry dock wide enough. I suggest we make it wide enough to maintain FPSOs here. We've seen recently the Terra Nova go to Ferrol, Spain, $500 million US for a refit. And then the Sea Rose in Ireland, $100 million around Canadian, I think. So those are big jobs, and they're sitting right off our shores. We'd be proud enough, I'll tell you, to maintain them, bring them in for big refits, 5-year cycles. I guess another piece to support that, if I could.
Yeah, go ahead.
The sail over to Spain and Ireland, takes about 5 days, and then we're 5 days back. So you're 10 days out of service. Yeah. If we do that work here, that could equate to, you're talking $60 a barrel, 150,000 barrels a day. 10 days, about $90 million. So we're saving money right there if we can put this in the right place.
Like to talk about thinking big and vision. If we're going in, we may as well go in and maximize the opportunity. All right, Bob, appreciate the time today. Thank you. Congratulations. It's a big, it could be a very big time and big opportunity for many of the people you represent. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you so much, Tim. Take care.
All right, take care. That is Bob Fiander. He is the Executive Director of Trades NL. You hear the enthusiasm in Bob's voice. Listen, if you are a worker who sees an opportunity here, give us a call. I want to hear your perspective on it. It appears to be very substantive. What do you think? Or if you're somebody who was struck by Connor's comments and are worried that, again, we're having a very tunnel vision-like focus on oil and the environment will get forgotten, give us a call. We want to hear all of your views today. Time for a break. When we come back, more of your calls on VOCM's Open Line.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back. Tim Powers in here for the week. Give us a call if you want. Look, we were talking to Connor from the Sierra Club about alternative energy, and it is very fascinating. If you have looked at any of the different media outlets in the province over the last few weeks, you have seen the struggles of one very prominent one, World Energy GHG's GH2, of course, was going to develop the hydrogen sector in the West Coast, in the Stephenville area, and they have fallen upon difficult times. The challenge involves some of the challenges that the proponent of World Energy GHG2, John Risley, is having. Those are well documented, but the story gets quite more cumbersome, but not hopeful. You just look at today's CBC, for example. Consortium of companies behind a proposed green hydrogen operation in western Newfoundland say a recent decision by the provincial government to reclaim Crown land has driven it to seek creditor protection and could render it worthless. Reading from the story here, World Energy GH2's proposal, once at the forefront of a push to develop wind-powered hydrogen energy sector in Newfoundland and Labrador, championed by Nova Scotia seafood magnate John Risley, but court documents reveal the project is grappling with steep debt and a threat from the provincial government to take away its stockpile of land. According to a quote here from the affidavit that has been filed, one of the affidavits, the company is in an immediate liquidity crisis, and that's from Richard Hu, who is the chief executive of the companies in the consortium referred to as WEGH2 Group. We have no meaningful credit availability under our current facilities and unsustainability operating with no ability to satisfy creditors absent a formal process. We well know that many companies in Atlantic Canada have been racing to harness wind energy to produce hydrogen and ammonia for eventual shipment to Europe. Though the market has been slow to develop overseas, hydrogen, when turned into ammonia for long-distance shipping, has various applications, including a fuel for transportation. You will recall, with the great fanfare that was bestowed upon Stephenville when the German Chancellor, then Prime Minister Trudeau, and others arrived to champion what could have been the GH2 Oh, my goodness. I am struggling with my letters today. How about that? World Energy GH2's proposal. That apparently, unfortunately, right now, from an industrial perspective, is going nowhere. Now, there was a lot of local protest at the time. I remember being on this program and others, and people were very concerned about the impact of what the giant windmills, the giant turbines could do. There was great protest there. Right now, all of this is silent. I don't think the opportunity of hydrogen has gone away, but the opportunity on the West Coast seems to be a little quieter at the moment, though there are reports of different projects that are in development there. So you want to talk about that, give us a call. Would love to hear your perspective on that. I know the Briar our boys are kicking off down there now. It is just before 10 o'clock. We will go to the news shortly, but both Nathan Young and Brad Gushu are playing. Gushu seeing if he can go to 6-0, and Young seeing if he can improve to 4-3, both representing the province well. So there's a lot going on this morning, but I really want to get your take on what you think about Beta Nord. Are you... do you get excited about these announcements anymore, or are they just part and parcel of a long cycle of announcements that have promised, as Brian Peckford once said, someday the sun will shine and the have-not will be no more, or until we actually see them come to fruition? And we have seen some of these things come to fruition. We have seen the benefit of our offshore or oil and gas industry for a very long time. It has helped propel our economy. It is still a major revenue driver for the province. But how are you feeling about it? I can talk for hours, but I would prefer to hear you and what you're thinking about all of this. We're going to get some more expert opinion on this, but what are the people of the province thinking? This is, after all, the most important conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador, and as much as I enjoy having it with myself, I welcome other voices to the airwaves today. All right, when we come back, we're going to go to the news shortly, get an update on everything that is happening. We've got some more callers lined up, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you. I've also got some interesting texts from people who are listening, complaining about and highlighting the challenge with the decision-making process here, and highlighting the issue that the Liberal opposition has been highlighting, that didn't Tony Wakeham, when he was in opposition, running for the leader of the PCs, promise to bring things like this to the legislature for discussion? We'll talk about all of that and more when we come back after the news here on VOCM.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
All right, welcome back. It is quiet on the lines this morning. Give us a call. Lots to talk about. Let's go to that story in Port aux Basques. That is one that has really had me concerned for a little while. Of course, that is the Bruce II Arena. It suffered another setback in operations after a windstorm in January had knocked the roof down. What we have now is the electric panel has got water in it, and it's unfortunate. A leak in the roof caused the damage to the panel, which caused the arena's ice maker to fail. It's the latest of bad luck that the arena has experienced. The storm in January caused structural damage and ripped off a portion of the roof, which was only installed in the summer. Been a rough winter, says Mayor Andrews, who we're hoping to take on the show later. It's the heartbeat of the community. And so much so, there's 165 kids in the Port aux Basques Minor Hockey Association who are having trouble getting access to the ice time. That's not right. Their teams need it. They have kids and parents out there who rely on it so that the kids can participate in the sports. Thankfully, communities like Stephenville and others have been trying to pick up the slack and get people in, but to no avail. Are they able to pick up the entirety of the slack. Chris, I'm reading from a story here. Krista Farrell, the Hockey Association's president, says she is thankful to other communities for stepping up to keep Portabass players on the ice. However, the constant streak of bad luck is heartbreaking for the region, she says, quoting her directly. "We lost it for a month, and we got it back for 24 hours. Listen, as the coach of a youth hockey team, very fortunate to do it, I know how tough that can be for people. Look, yeah, there are bigger problems, absolutely, but when you have young kids and they really love a sport, they really love an activity, and they don't have the ability to fulfill it, that can be pretty devastating. So if you're in that area, you want to talk about it, give us a call to dive into all of that. Interesting text I got. I'll leave the texter anonymous, but this is one thing that I'm sure we'll hear more of. Text says this: little discussion of bad behavior associated with BP in the past and environmental outcomes. You'll remember some of the stories about British Petroleum and what happened in New Orleans, I believe it was, in the United States many years ago. They had, there's also been issues, you remember this, Deepwater Horizon. BP is involved in several significant environmental disasters, including the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, which was the largest oil spill in U.S. history. The disaster resulted in the release of almost 4.9 million barrels of oil into the Gulf of Mexico, causing extensive damage to marine and wildlife habitats. BP faced numerous legal settlements and penalties for its role in the disaster, including a $20 billion environment damage settlement. Certainly not suggesting that BP is going to have similar outcomes here, but the reputation of the company is one that people still remember. Certainly, it's also been a flagship company. But it is one that maybe people want to think about. That information, I just want to be clear with you, came from a Greenpeace press release, but that was something that was well documented in the mainstream press for a very, very long time. How are you feeling about that? BP does have an established reputation, though, as a successful producer. It has had that Deepwater Horizon experience. Of course, that was all chronicled in a film that involved Mark Wahlberg, if I recall correctly. Any concerns about all of that? Or are you fine? Does silence suggest fine? What does silence suggest? What else would you like to talk about? I can touch a little bit on this because I know Linda raised it last week. Now, as a lot of you know, I am a member of the Memorial University Board of Regents, very honored to be playing a role with the university. And the university introduced last week an Indigenous verification policy. For the most part, that verification policy was well regarded by a variety of Indigenous groups in Newfoundland and Labrador, including the Innu and the Inuit. Nunatsiavut did not have the same view. They expressed disappointment about it. The policy effectively follows standing practices that the communities themselves use, they being Indigenous communities, or the federal government uses to recognize Indigenous status or identity. It seems that for the most part, the policy announcement has gone over very well, bar those who feel they are being excluded, like the Nunatsiavut government. But I'm happy to talk as best I can about it. Can't get into the deliberations, but happy to talk about how you think it has gone. Is Indigenous verification and the way it has been laid out by Memorial a important step for the university? Does it address the concerns that many people have had, rightly, about how we look at, empower, and help our Indigenous and non-Indigenous students, and properly provide a learning environment where all opinions and views can be expressed? That one, I think, is one that could be a talker. Oh, what else do we have for you here today? Oh, yeah, this story. I remember this one. The Newfoundland woman who hopes celebrities who died with colorectal cancer can bring awareness to the disease. You want to see the interview Stephanie Vudgel did with CBC. She was cancer-free for 5 years. She's urging young people to be on the lookout for colorectal cancer symptoms. But hey, listen, it's important. Preventative medicine and healthcare screening. Colorectal cancer can be a brutal cancer if it is not caught early. There are lots of prevention methods and education awareness methods that are out there. The story's become more popular, of course, because James Van Dierbeek, the actor who played in Dawson's Creek, he died at 48, and he announced he had been diagnosed with stage 3 colorectal cancer in November 2024. Canadian actress Catherine O'Hara died from a blood clot in her lung, but she also lived with rectal cancer. So you want to talk about health, wellness, prevention. All of that is open to you, but it's time for a break here on VOCM's Open Line.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
All right, the lines are finally lighting up. It's taken a bit of time, but we've got her going now. Charlie, spoke to Charlie earlier in the week, but always happy to chat with Charlie. Middle East and Beta Nord. Fire away, my friend.
Okay, good morning, Tim. I guess I'm a bit jaded after about 7 or 8 decades of living. I won't confirm the 8 yet. But anyway, have you ever noticed over the years we get this bonanza from different places, but have you ever seen any of the governments use it wisely to pay down our debt to get our financial house in order?
Well, on that point, I was started today about that. We usually reinvest it or spend it on other things, but I think Premier Fury did start a future fund of sorts, but we haven't been, how about this, Charlie? I'll be diplomatic today. We haven't been as diligent as we could have been getting our financial house in order.
Danny Williams had 2 years. He was paying down the debt. I was his biggest supporter at that time. And after 2 years, he stopped that because that wasn't sexy enough, and he went crazy with spending. That was the one I remember. As far as the other one, that future fund, that's only on borrowed money. I don't look at that as anything. It was putting away money that we didn't really own. But anyway, I guess we'll see how it all works out, but call me a little bit doubtful at this time, even though I'm glad the project is going ahead, you know?
Yeah, and look, I think it's... Can I just let me add, Charlie, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to add, look, I think those of us of a certain age, I don't have 7 or 8 decades yet, though today I may feel like I do, but we've seen the announcements, and we have seen progress, but often we get so excited with the hype, we get a little let down, even when we do have progress, and it takes time. Anyway, go ahead, Charlie.
No, well, just to finish the point on that, they'll always find education, health, roads. There'll always be things to spend it on, and of course, with these projects, they can also probably increase the borrowing. So I don't see any good sign of anything happening on that front, and eventually that's going to kill us. But anyway, speaking of Trump. The other day, I've listened to a dozen reasons now about motivations for going into war, and I think I finally figured out what really happened there. So you want to hear that for a second?
You lay that one on me. Go for it.
Netanyahu has been in the last 4 decades, has been trying to get an attack on Iran, and he's never got support from the American presidents. This is what changed. He came there and he said basically to Trump, look, he tried to assassinate you. Look how successful you were in bombing the nuclear sites, and look how the response was muted and ineffective. Look how things worked out for you in Venezuela. You'll be a hero, sure, in the Middle East, in many countries, if you can collapse that regime, and so on and so on. He had a ready and willing partner because of vanity, ego, and these reasons I just gave you. How would you feel about that as a motivation?
I am shocked, Charlie, that you would think that ego appeals work with President Trump. Now, that is just blasphemous. You mightn't be too far wrong, because I did see a story yesterday, I believe it was in the Washington Post, referencing how assassination attempts on the president have influenced his actions in Iran. So maybe we're reading the same thing. All right, I can give you 30 seconds, because I got a couple other callers.
I didn't see that. I thought I haven't heard this, and I don't know why I haven't. But do you remember when the Venezuelan president mocked him on air, and a few weeks after he went in there? This is a big thing with him. He can sit back there and now wield that American power. Believe me, ego is very, very big in this. But anyway, I guess we'll call it a day.
Well, look up that Washington Post article so you can see your theory validated by others. Appreciate it, Charlie. Good to talk to you. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, that was Charlie. Paul, you want to have a chat? How are you this morning, sir? You there, Paul?
Hello. I am there.
Yeah, I hear you, my friend. Go ahead. That you, Paul? That you, Paul? There you go. We'll do the old that you. Go ahead, my friend.
Am I on?
You're on, buddy. You're on. It's live. It's real.
You got me in between the bologna and eggs this morning. I had to call up and mention about Brian Pickford. Now, the only thing I remember about Brian Pickford now, when I was a young fella, I'd be working over to the village, coming home like late at night, and I'd see the sprung greenhouse.
I knew you were going to say the sprung greenhouse. Yes, because if you were working at the village, I remember landing in Torbay. You could see that thing miles away.
Wow. There were two buildings, weren't there? I'm forgetting your name now.
Tim, that's all right. Listen,
there were two buildings, weren't there?
I can't remember if there were two, but if there were two, they were really well lit, and you must have had to get sunglasses, did you, to come home from the village at night?
Well, just imagine anyone who lived nearby, Tim. I was talking to one person one time. They said they had to keep their shades closed at night all the time, right?
Yeah, that cucumber venture went really, really, really well. I don't know about the have-not being no more paved by green cucumbers that eventually turned to pickles. Oh, my. How's your Newfoundland steak, your bologna this morning? Is it good?
2 slices of bologna, 2 eggs, and 2 toast. I'm right in the middle of it, but I had to get on talking to you. And, you know why Pickford said someday the light will shine? It's because of the sprung greenhouse.
No, you're not having anything else with that bologna and eggs, are you?
What's that?
I said you're not having anything else with those bologna and eggs this morning, are you?
No,
or just
I thought I'd throw it in there, everybody. Listen, I just wanted to finish off with saying something about the VOCM crew there. Now, I thought, what you should do is come up with a commemorative stamp for you guys.
Okay.
Now, contact the Historical Society, but you're not dead yet, Tim. So I think most people on the stamp are dead by now, but the VOCM should have a stamp out. Seriously now, in a stamp book with all the great guys and gals that have been there. The Paddy Daly's, the George McLarens, Linda McLarens, Vince Gallant, and yourself.
Yeah. Well, that's very kind of you. Listen, I'd rather the bologna and the eggs this morning. Can't get any good bologna where I am, but I'll take the stamp. Paul, great to chat with you. You brought a few laughs to the show. Thank you.
Okay, Tim, you take care.
Take care. I love the bologna. Nice bit of fried bologna. All right, Paul wants to talk. Beta Nord and fish. Or sorry, Dave. I just talked to Paul. Jeez, Paul's got me thinking of stamps and bologna. Dave, Beta Nord Fisheries. Tell us your thoughts.
Good morning. How are you, Tim? Nice to talk to you.
I am all right. How are you?
Not too bad at all. Like everybody else in Newfoundland today, all wondering about the big announcement and everything yesterday.
Yeah.
And, of course, it's a big deal, but it's a little ways off in the future. So one of the more immediate concerns that I would like to bring about today is the attention that needs to be paid to our fishery before the spring comes, before everybody's expecting to go back to work, and get not only prices nailed down, but some type of negotiative process that allows for fairness in our fishery above and beyond what we see, because we're still having great difficulty arriving with pricing through pricing schemes and plans and models and whatever the case may be, when it all comes down to catching fish and selling it. I think they made it much too difficult to arrive at a price, and the only real significant change that could, I think in my mind, make any difference for this situation for not only this year coming, but for years to come, is a true open market situation, a free market situation where you compete for what you get at the wharf. There's no need for any type of schematics or whatever the case may be, because the market will drive what happens with the market. If it was a case where we only had but one market in the world to consider, and what goes on in that market, such as things like, say, let's take the Urner-Barry formula. That sets a very narrow and specific timeline of time to establish pricing that can be affected by everything from the amount of supply in the market at the time, which most of the bigger companies control, to how much or how close you are to an opening season. And it circles back to being able to control that situation. And I do believe that things like the Urner-Barry formula and others were never designed for a true open market situation. That was always based upon a situation of control.
We are waiting just to line up our next guest. That is Vashi Kapela. We have her. There you go, Vashi. You would love it. It is an adventure in radio today. The line dropped. The technology's not working, but phone still works. So delighted to have you. Of course, you're the host of Power Play, the Vashi Kapela Show on radio, and Question Period. And Vashi, there's a lot going on. Both Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre are traveling the world. Let's start with the Prime Minister. He's been to India. He's now in Australia. Purpose of these trips, what is he trying to do?
I think the purpose of the trip is certainly explicitly all about the economy and maybe more specifically trying to expand trade with economies outside of the United States to basically get more of what we make in Canada to other markets so that we're not as reliant on the United States. It's a kind of a long-term goal. So there's lots of deals being signed, but what exactly they materialize into, I think, remains an open question. The issue with this trip has been that, events sort of within his control around India and national security have ended up dominating the coverage of his trip there. So not the deals that he's signing, but that. And then more largely what's happened with Iran and in the Middle East, and his reaction there has also kind of dominated coverage. So though the story they want out of this is we're finding new markets for Canadian exports, it's not the story they're getting.
And the story they've been getting, though, is why are we doing business with India? Before the Prime Minister left, there was a briefing that is normal given by unnamed senior officials, in which an unnamed senior official effectively said, we're not as concerned as we once were about Indian interference in Canada, Indian activities in Canada, but the government has kind of backpedaled on that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's a really weird series of events, kind of an own goal. Like everybody was aware of these national security issues that were first raised by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau that are very, very serious, right? Saying essentially agents of the government of India were tied to murder on Canadian soil, extortion. The RCMP backed up those claims. And as a result, a whole bunch of Indian diplomats, including the High Commissioner, were kicked out of this country. So fast forward to Carney winning. He says, we've got to reset because India is a massive market, the world's biggest democratic economic market for us. And then he plans this trip. He meets Modi at the G7. They plan this trip. We're going to India. Right before the trip, we get a briefing. The reporters who are going on the trip get a briefing from government officials who the conditions of the briefing are, we can quote you and we can refer to the information that you said, but we don't name you. We just say government officials. Mm-hmm. So a couple of these government officials said nothing to worry about with India anymore. It's not happening. This stuff that Trudeau said, that the RCMP said, it's just not happening anymore. Otherwise, we wouldn't be going on this trip. But the problem is, that's a lot of stuff to say that was happening that all of a sudden isn't happening. Plus, we have evidence, particularly around extortion, that there are some ties with the Bishnoi gang that are still very evident in cities like Surrey and Brampton and Calgary. And so, here we go. This becomes the story, right? How are you meeting Modi when this weirdness is going on? What is the actual position of the government? And on that, the government has just been hard to get a straight answer from. Anita Anand, the foreign affairs minister, was grilled about this right at the start of the trip. She couldn't come up with a yes or no answer. 2 days later, she finally says, well, those aren't the words I would use. And 2 days after that, the prime minister, after canceling a press conference, a scrum with reporters, then holds one and basically can't say much more, doesn't say much more other than that. It kind of adds to the confusion. Again, that's what all the headlines are about.
Yeah, and just before we move away from the Prime Minister and get the opposition leader, the Prime Minister is also taking a little bit of heat for where Canada actually stands on the actions in Iran taken by the United States and Israel. Originally, the Prime Minister had said, the government had said fully behind the airstrikes. It was necessary because of the nuclear capacity that Iran was building. But it's evolved over the course of the week to, I think what it is now is, yeah, we support the strikes, but we weren't consulted, and international law really needs to be adhered to, and there should be a diplomatic solution. How's this playing out for the government?
I mean, it's way too complex of a position, to be blunt, for it to resonate, I think, with Canadians. I think the initial position that the Prime Minister took, as you point to, once the strikes happened, was actually pretty clear. We support these strikes insofar as they, are aimed at blocking Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. That didn't make everyone happy, but it was at least a position that people could react to one way or the other, either positively or negatively. Then you have the Prime Minister asked on multiple occasions yesterday by reporters to expand on that position. And in doing so, he kind of muddled things, I think. And I get where he's coming from in a way. He basically was saying, it's the failure of the international order that got us to this point because pressure from allies from the UN didn't leave it so that Iran is further away from acquiring a nuclear weapon or stop this regime from being as brutal as it is. But at the same time, should I have been consulted prior to this? I would have said, no, this contravenes international law. But now that it's happened, I'm okay that it's happened. I just think that may all be true in the case of the Prime Minister, and I don't want to take away from that. But the idea that would then satisfy Canadians on any side of this issue, or even be understandable as a cohesive policy, I think it fell short of that.
And there has been a little bit of controversy among Liberals. I believe it's Will Rees, the Victoria MP, was initially not very supportive of the government's action when they were firmly in line with the U.S. And certainly there is the argument that among the Liberal support base, there are people who want to see no real truck or trade with anything that involves Israel. Just talk about that if you can.
Yeah, I think it's actually a pretty interesting dilemma for the Prime Minister because there are people like Will Rees, there are more progressive people in the Liberal Party who certainly would not be supportive of a position from the federal government that endorsed, A, something Trump was doing internationally that they didn't feel is justified, or B, as you point out, Israel. You've even got people like Lloyd Axworthy, former foreign affairs minister, speaking out against Davos' speech in the first place, and then all of this stuff. I think that that is a unique issue for the Prime Minister. But I do also take his point that, what was going on in Iran for decades now is also very egregious. And in many cases, I know Canadians don't like to hear it because we're very interested in it, kind of obsessed with Trump and his wrongdoing, but in many cases more egregious than what Trump is doing. I mean, a girl was killed a few years ago because her hijab was on the wrong way. Tens of thousands of protesters were slaughtered in the street for simply rising up and saying that the punishing economic conditions that they live under were unacceptable. Like, it was a brutal regime that also, by the way, is a state sponsor of terrorism that has affected every single one of our lives and lives in many of our allied nations. So I think that view is one that should be taken into account as well. And clearly it informs part of the Prime Minister's position. I understand that international law is important to a lot of Liberals and to a lot of people in this country, and it should be. But the Prime Minister's point is, like, even when that was kind of the primary thing we cared about, it didn't exactly work to prevent the worst atrocities. So we can keep pretending that that's the world we live in, or we can just take things for the way they are. Now, the bigger question for the Prime Minister is how consistent that view is in the positions that materialize from him.
Speaking of positions and materializing, Pierre probably have taken a lot of criticism in the last number of months for, not going after Donald Trump, not staking out his own brand and reputation internationally. He gave a speech last week in Toronto where he had more pointed criticism of Donald Trump, talked about some options the Conservative Party might pursue were they to be in power. He was in England. I believe he's on his way to Germany. Tell us about Poilievre's trip and what he's trying to do.
Yeah, it's very interesting because he is sort of like, I think now if we look in retrospect at the past few weeks, definitely delineating a point of departure from some of the approaches he took on Trump, for example, or even more generally politics, right? He did that Mansbridge podcast in which it was, very much a different tone and sort of like talking frankly about all the sort of issues that pundits surmise about, like, do you want an election? What do you think about Mark Carney? Are you going to work together? Like, how much do you think about how you lost? Like, all those kinds of very interesting things. And then that speech in conjunction with this trip, he was in London. He's now headed to Germany. I would say, like, after a number of bad weeks for Pierre Poilievre and great weeks for the Prime Minister, the converse is true. Over the last week and a half or so, I think actually it's been a better week for Poilievre than it has been for the last few months. And it's been a much worse week for the Prime Minister than it has been for him for the last few months. So I'm curious to see if that has any bearing on public opinion polls, which seem to show a solidifying Liberal lead. But I think that, Poilievre's delineation here, demarcation, is going to be fascinating. You made a great point on my show the other day. It's going to be the consistency of the approach that sort of determines how the degree to which it resonates with Canadians and whether it can blunt this trajectory of public opinion polling. But it is fascinating to see him try and to change after all this time.
Well, appreciate your insight. Appreciate you joining us on Newfoundland's largest conversation when we're playing broken telephone line today, Vashi. Thank you.
I've been there. It's all good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. That is Vashi Capella's CTV's Question Period Power Play and the Vashi Capella Show. All right, we're going to take a break now. I think we have Fred Hutton when we come back here on Open Line. Third time's a charm, they say, so let's see if it works this time. So much technology challenge today, but Fred Hutton knows all about that. Fred, I said that before. I hope it works now. Are you there, Fred?
I am here, Tim. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's...
I was going to say, I work through Dark NL on VOCM, so I understand the challenges of we started on a Friday morning and we didn't end until Monday morning. With so kudos to your engineering team, too, for stitching it all together there today.
Yeah, we're stitching it all together. All right, we'll get past my challenges and your history of working through similar things. Let's talk the Beta Nord announcement. I heard you earlier. I think the audience heard you earlier, and others expressed a couple of points of frustration. One, no defined agreement on what topsides would look like and a number around topsides. Second thing, the fact that this isn't going to the House of Assembly. You argue that Premier VOCM made that commitment when he was a leader, seeking the leadership of the Conservative Party. Walk us through that, Fred.
Great, Tim. I really do want to talk about this today, so I'm glad that we're having this conversation. And I am actually glad, and we are as a party glad, that the Bay du Nord oil project is going forward. It's why we fought so hard for it. And look, people are saying, oh, you're just trying to take credit for this. But the truth of the matter is back in 2021 and 2022, the federal government at that time, under a different leadership and under a different environment minister, Stephen Guilbeault, did not want this to go forward. Andrew Furey was the premier at the time. He fought very hard against former Prime Minister Trudeau and the former environment minister, and we got the environmental assessment. Now, just for timelines and context for your listeners, shortly after that, Equinor came to the table and said, look, at the Energy NL conference, we have to shelve this. The costs of trying to get this project off the ground have just gone through the roof, like everything did post-COVID. And we'll get back to you in a couple of years. Fast forward to the last couple of months. Prior to the current government being in office, they were coming to us. We were trying to reach a final agreement similar to what was here, which is why we didn't sign it. Now, they've signed it now, but, for context again, the current premier, when he was in opposition, said if there is going to be a deal on Equinor, there needs to be a debate. There has been no debate. During the campaign, he promised that 70% of the topside work, which is the material on top of the vessel, would have to be built here. We're not guaranteed anything. We get to bid. Talk to anybody in the industry, they will tell you that we cannot do it for as cheap as they will do it elsewhere in the world. So what they've tried to sell us now is that the company is going to put up $200 million towards this dry dock, which can be used in other industries and which would be great and which was something we were trying to do even without Equinor. But there's no guarantee that we're going to get that money because they still haven't made the final investment decision on whether or not this project is going ahead. So I want to be clear. We're happy that this has gotten to this stage, and we applaud the current government for getting at least to this stage with the companies coming back to the table. But, the price of oil has gone through the roof now in the last little while. The companies stand to make a lot of money off this. We should have had better leverage in terms of what we would get. Now, there's no guarantee our local companies can bid on topside work, but there's no guarantee we'll actually get any. And if you talk to people in the industry, they say it's very unlikely that we will get that topside work. The subsea work is not done here. And just for another bit of clarity, I heard in your newscast MHA Sheila O'Leary talking about she doesn't see the difference between yesterday and what we did with Churchill Falls. The difference is there was a debate. There was a 4-day, 9-hour-a-day debate, and for the first time in the history of this province, we had experts in the field, independent experts, come in and answer questions from all 40 MHAs, well, 39, save the speaker, over a 4-day period. That's never happened before. And there was a debate.
Let me ask you this, because, look, you're in the political realm now. What is the public importance of this debate? Because even with the MOU debate that you did have in that capacity, I mean, it doesn't arguably get at the substantive stuff, or does it? Would you make the argument that, look, you have this debate and you'll get more details about what the deal means, and then the public can take it from there?
Exactly, and it's similar to what's happening with with Churchill Falls. I mean, Tony Wakeham has said he wants to have a referendum on that. I mean, this is right now the definitive or the MOU on Churchill Falls. If I can just sort of sidetrack to that for a second, is, and I've said this to you before, a 37-page document. But the definitive agreements are going to be 12 to 15 extensive contracts, and trying to explain to the average person out there whether or not this is a good deal or not a good deal, which is why you bring in outside experts and pay people to give you their advice on it, like J.P. Morgan, like Power Advisory, and like Stikeman Elliott, which was what we did with Churchill Falls. They're looking for a political win here, but what they've done is they've said we might get some topside work, we might get the dry dock. We still don't even know if we'll get that money because they haven't signed the final agreement. And so no topsides, no hull, and there's been no final investment decision made on this yet. So there's still a lot of things very much up in the air. But again, I want to say we want this to go through. And it always, I chuckle, I laugh when I hear Tony Wakeham saying we're back in the oil industry. Don't forget, we have Hibernia out there. We have Hebron out there. We have West White Rose. We have Terra Nova, and we have White Rose. And I saw a funny comment online from somebody whose husband obviously works offshore. He said, we're back in the oil business. I mean, I need to find out where my husband's been going for the last 10 years every 3 weeks. We're in the oil business. We've made billions and billions of dollars. Thousands of people work in it. There has been a lull in exploration due to geopolitical things and federal government, regulations, but we've overcome that. And, we are very much still in the oil business.
Most certainly. And look, you know this, you cover them, you are one. Hyperbole and politicians, they go hand in hand. When they're particularly excited, it goes to a different level. But question I want to get at is one from a conversation I had with Bob Fiander earlier, who runs Trades NL. I asked him about topsides and the lack of a number, specific number for production in Newfoundland. He didn't seem too fussed about it because his take was that, look, what is being promised with the Bull Arm and what is happening in terms of a floating dock will be of significant value. He went on to say, if I'm remembering correctly, that there wasn't a topsides number there before, so he's not overly frustrated about it. What is your response to Mr. Fiander's take?
Well, look, we have a great trades workforce in this province, and the unfortunate part is many of those people have had to go to other places to make money to support their families back here. We'd like to see an end to that as well. But the bottom line here is nothing has been promised. These are all maybe, or if this happens. There's no promise here that any of this is going to happen. If we build a dockside, or a dry dock, pardon me, yes, there is potential that we will get work, but there's not one single contract lined up for that right now. So there's no definitive amount of work that could be linked to that. Would it create an industry or the ability for an industry? Yes, but there's nothing substantive there to show that we actually have a contract. There's lots of talk of submarines being serviced down here or ships that we could get because the Canadian Navy has a wait time of 2 years, 3 years, whatever, to get things refitted. So but none of this is definitive. None of it. Versus if you had guaranteed from Equinor and BP that 70% of the topside work would be done here. That's what they said they wouldn't do. They wouldn't sign a contract to get our resource to leave this province unless people were benefiting. And what Trades NL wanted during the campaign and what they endorsed the PCs for was a guarantee that that's what they do. And that's the promise that was broken by the PCs. So yes, we can build a dry dock and there's potential for work, but there's nothing definitive there at this point in time. So there's still a lot of question marks about this. The biggest one being we've crossed this threshold of the process, and next year, in a year from now, we'll find out if they will actually go through with this in the final investment decision, if the numbers line up then for the company. If they don't, there's no dry dock, there's no $200 million, there's no work down the road. At least if we'd locked in for the topside work here, we would have had something definitive that they could point to and say, yes, we've got this many person hours because topsides have been built before, and they could actually use, some sort of a metric to show this is how many people will work and this is how much money we'll get out of it.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you for standing by through the tech adventures we had this morning. Appreciate your insight on all of this, Fred. You have a good day.
Thanks very much. I'm sure we'll be talking about this again, Tim. All the best to your listeners.
All right, take care. That is Fred Hutton, the MHA for Conception Bay East and the opposition critic for energy. All right, Ross is on line one. He wants to talk about Beta Nord. Go ahead, Ross.
Yes, good day, sir. Thank you for taking my call.
I'm glad they're finally working, Ross. So I appreciate you calling today on this day of technical adventures. You go ahead, Ross.
Yes, I know. I had technical adventures on my end, too. But anyhow, the Beta Nord discussion, it goes on and on and on. My first question to you is Bull Arm. They're talking about Bull Arm.
Yes.
Who owns Bull Arm?
Based on what I read, the government of Newfoundland and Labrador, because they had an MOU to flip it to North Atlantic, which they tore up.
Yeah, my understanding of Bull Arm was built under the funds from the Newfoundland government. It is one of the most modern facilities in the world. It got mothballed, and my understanding was E.F. Barnes purchased it as a private individual. I don't know if I got the truth or not.
Based on what I saw, I don't know. I'm just looking at the government.
I don't know either. But I will tell you one thing: that Bull Arm in Trinity Bay is a facility that is equal to the other two or three facilities in the world. I don't know who owns it. I don't know what's going on. And I just shake my head every day when I sit down. And I have a lot of my relations work in the offshore field. And there is a 2 to 3 year waiting list for refits on top form, platform, ships, blah, blah, blah. My question is why is all of a sudden this is a big deal when the government of Newfoundland has sat back on their ass for the last 5 years and not pursued developing a Bull Arm to the fullest extent it has? Like, we have one of the best facilities in the world. There's only 2 or 3 of them. And then all of a sudden, it's mothballed. You hear rumors that this place bought and that place bought it. It's been mothballed. And we have a facility that Bay du Nord should not even come into the conversation. We should have been up and running from the day Hibernia went out of Bull Arm. The next one should have come in, and the next one should have come in.
Well, right? I can answer.
That's where I have a problem. Yeah, that's where I have a problem.
Fair points. So I bet the current PC government would argue they're a new government. They've been only in power for 4 years. They may share the same view you do on why Bull Arm was mothballed. To the answer to your question of who owns Bull Arm, here's what I have from a government news release. The lease for the Bull Arm site is currently held by Bull Arm Fabrication Incorporated, which operates the site on behalf of the provincial government. So that would indicate, according to this, that the provincial government owns it. I don't know if E.F. Barnes owned it at one point or not, but the current owner is the government of Newfoundland and Labrador.
Which is absolutely beautiful. I really love that. That's absolutely beautiful. Now, my next question to you is why did this sit vacant for all of these years with a demand on the global market for a use of a shipyard like we have? I don't care what the political party was in power. Why is it sitting empty and people are not working? This facility we have at Bull Arm is second or third in the world. Like, how stupid are we to have a mega project like this sitting with mothballs on it when there's a 2 and 3 and 4 year demand for that facility?
Well, Ross, history might...
Listen to me. Who's not doing their job?
Listen, man.
Somebody's not doing their job. And I'm not calling out political parties. I'm calling out somebody is not doing their job.
Well, I don't know who decided over the last 5 years or not to use it or not, but so I don't know the answer to your question, but I would answer this question about how stupid we are or have been in the past. Don't forget we had a cucumber business, we had a hockey stick factory, we had a rubber boot factory, so we've not always made the best decisions. Anyway, Ross, gotta leave it there.
I know where you're coming from, but honest to God, honest to God, when you have a world-class facility at your doorstep, which has already been bought, paid for, and proven, I can't see why that cannot operate.
Well, let's see if it does. I got to leave it there, Ross. Sorry to interrupt. Thank you for your call. Good thoughts you have. Appreciate you talking to us today. You take care.
Okay.
All right. That is Ross. Some interesting perspectives. Good questions. Why did it sit mothballed for 5 years? Have you got an opinion on that? Let us know. But we're going to take a break now. And when we come back, we've got Otto who wants to talk about the food fishery. Back momentarily. All right, I've got more information for Ross before we go to Otto on line 3. So, Ross, here is what I've been told by somebody who has a close association with the former government. D.F. Barnes did, in fact, lease it. The Liberals signed an MOU for North Atlantic to long-term lease Bull Arm. The PCs have torn up the MOU, as we know. Oilco will continue to own and operate Bull Arm, and it is, but the government of Newfoundland owns it under Oilco. So we were right, but that also gives some perspective to what you had brought forward about D.F. Barnes. So there you go, bringing you live information as I get it. Otto, you want to talk about the food fishery. Let her rip.
Thanks, Tim, for taking my call, buddy.
Good to talk to you, Otto. A little hard to hear you, but go ahead.
I'd like to see the food fish open in June. Fish is hungry then, right? August month.
Yeah.
They're glutted. They're on the bottom.
Okay.
You want to reopen again in October when they're hungry. You got to have a strong wind or undertow to throw up the bait, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Open it in June when they're hungry for the bait, eh? You catch it on the squid, eh? You got from last year, put it in the fridge, you got bait, right?
Right.
In
so
August
your suggestion
month, it's on the bottom in deep water, right? It's hard to catch.
Right, so harder to catch. Hard to catch.
Yeah. Yep.
So you would like to see it open later later in the year, in the fall?
Yeah, October month, and opens in June, eh? When it's hungry, eh?
Okay. All right, that makes. And what do you think about the suggestion from the PC or the federal conservatives, not the PCs, that the recreational food fishery go for 7 days as opposed to 3?
Well, down in Labrador, you cross the border in Quebec, they can fish for 7 days a week. On the other side of the border, 3 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand
so you don't think that makes sense?
Well,
yeah.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, they don't trust us. They trust the mainlanders, but they don't trust us, right?
Well,
Jonathan Rowe had a bill there and got shot down by the Liberals, eh? Well, I figure the Minister of Fisheries from Newfoundland, Ms. Thompson, eh? But they all turned it down, right?
Yeah, 4 Newfoundland Liberals voted against Jonathan Rowe's motion. That is correct.
Yeah. Well, as far as I'm concerned, Nova Scotia, Quebec, they can fish for 7 days a week, and we only fish for 3. That's not fair.
That's certainly a legitimate way to feel. I don't know why that is, but we will dig into that. Anything else you want to add, Otto, about the food fishery?
Yeah, that's about it. But I was in the Canadian Rangers 17 years, eh?
Oh, were you?
We got paid the same as the regular army, the forces, eh?
Oh, did you?
We got the same pay, right? But we don't get no pension from the Rangers, eh? Like DVA, right?
Oh, you don't?
No. No, I don't know why that is. I mean, we got paid the same as the regular forces, hey?
Yeah, that's something to look into. I don't know what.
You from
I'm
Newfoundland?
from St. John's.
Yeah.
I'm from St. John's, man. Grew up in St. John's.
Yes, boy. Yep. Hey, I care what? Montreal fan?
Pardon?
Are you a Montreal fan?
Well, we're losing Otto there. Maybe we better move on. Beth, how about Mike Cousy on line 2? You there, Mike? Whoop, is Mike there?
Yeah, have I got you?
It's that kind of day, Mike. I don't know. We got you. We do. We do have you now. What is you want to respond to what Fred said earlier? Do you?
Yeah. Well, I listen to Fred Hutton and stuff like that there, and he always speaks with such determination, such authority, such kind of a know-it-all, really, and stuff like that there. But listening to politicians and stuff from that there and Fred, so, like, I don't hear Fred mention anything about how better off we are because of the Liberal government that this Newfoundland province had. I don't hear him bragging about what they've done and what they succeeded in, and we're $19 billion in the hole, and we're in a deficit again. And you reach a certain stage of your life. I was born in 1962. I'm 63 years old. And I listen to this stuff all the time. And to hear Fred Hutton, and all of them should be so gracious, even the PCs, Tony Wakeham and stuff. These people, we depend on these people to make Newfoundland a better place to live, to make it affordable, to balance the budget, pay off the deficit. And when you reach a certain age, like I am now at 63, it's like you can hardly listen to it anymore because we should be the richest province in Canada with the resources that we got. And we keep... we're soon going to have to do interviews for MHA. A public board is going to have to be set up that instead of voting these people in, we interview them, and then we'll look at their resume and look what they can do. But if not, this is my personal opinion, of course, I don't think Newfoundland is going to be better off.
There's a lot in there, Mike. It reminds me of just listen. I'm a little younger than you are, but I share similar views about what we've heard over the years from all politicians. Probably all very well-meaning, but it gets to ring a little hollow at a certain point. I mean, I go back to that Brian Peckford line, right? The sun shall shine and the have-not will be no more. That's over 40 years ago. And look, certainly we've benefited from oil. There's no doubt about that through different governments and the like, but we still aren't at a place where we've been told we would be. So, yeah, it's totally fair to be a bit cynical, man. No, I have no disagreement with you being cynical about that. Your idea is interesting, but I don't know how it would be feasible. I mean, we interview people during an election process, I guess, but maybe there's other ways.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a lover of Newfoundland and Labrador, and I've spent a lot of time in Labrador, and I love Newfoundland, and I love that we are unique to Canada. We are unique to Canada. We're surrounded by water, and we have the best people in the world. And sometimes it's very disappointing, Tim, to see where we're going to with these politicians and stuff, and that they're like Fred Hutton. Maybe he can mention about the $34 million in land leases that the hydrogen projects were going to make us rich. Maybe he can mention, like, we could do with $34 million when we're $19 billion in the hole, and maybe he could bring up about how much money John Risley got, $128 million from the Trudeau Slush Fund, and what actually came out of it. Maybe the Liberals can look at that, and they're fighting about build a hospital, not build a hospital, renovate or whatever. Like, you don't hear in the House of Assembly, I call it daycare, actually. I call it daycare. You don't hear in the House Assembly, you do not hear any serious decisions being made. Maybe we are $19 billion in debt. Talk about it. We can't balance a budget. We have gold mines, Boise Bay, biggest nickel find in the world, IOC, offshore oil, forestry, fishery, everything else. And you don't hear them talking about all this money is coming in and how it's mishandled, and we can't seem to get any better. It's like going around with the ass out of your pants. You know what I mean? Is not going to get any better, right? But
no, well, I appreciate the lesson. I appreciate the lesson. I appreciate the observations, Mike. I appreciate you calling, but I got to go to break. Thanks for the call today.
Okay. And the next time you get Fred on or John Hogan, just ask them what they done for this province. Just ask them.
All right. I will do that. All right. Thanks, Mike. All right. When we come back, Rick Farrell, the president of Unifor Local 20 in Marystown, is going to join us, and Tony's on the line to talk about Beta North. Stand by for both those calls in a moment here on VOCM's Open Line.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back, everybody. 25 minutes to go. It's been a good last couple of hours, despite all the technical adventures we have. And again, kudos to Beth Fagan and everybody in the studio, the engineers who are making this work so we can talk to you. With that said, let's bring on Rick Farrell. Rick is the president of Unifor Local 20 in Marystown. Rick, how are you doing today?
Yes, good morning, Tim. How are you?
Oh, I feel like I need some of your members to keep me wired up properly today, but we're plowing through it, as I'm sure your guys do often. Rick, Beta Nord, your thoughts?
Yes, okay. We're here in Marystown, here in the Bjorn Peninsula. We've been in the offshore fabrication industry for the last 25, 30 years, and yesterday's announcement, we listened to it very carefully. We are happy that a floating drawdock could be constructed here in Newfoundland going forward, but at the same time, with no mention of topsides work or subsea work, where does that leave a fabrication facility like Kiewit Offshore Services Marystown and here in the Bjorn Peninsula?
Great questions. Was there any consultation done with you or your members or Kiewit that you know of before yesterday's announcement? That's question one. And related to that, question two, when Beta Nord was previously announced, before 2023, was there any envisioning that Marystown would have a role to play? What can you tell us about those two questions, Rick?
Well, over the years, we've had a big role to play in offshore fabrication. The last time we had work here in Marystown was for the living quarters module for West White Rose, and that finished back in October of 2021. So we've been idle now for 4.5 years, and we're just hoping and anticipating that there will be some work on this project that will be steered towards Marystown, a town of 5,000 people here in the peninsula with 20,000 people.
Yeah, no doubt. And look, I said this to somebody earlier from your neck of the woods. I have long had people of Marystown like Glenn Tobin and others talk about what you have there and what you can do there. Have you had the opportunity yet? Are you going to reach out to the Minister of Energy, the Premier, to speak about what you guys can do?
Oh, definitely. When we meet again in our membership, we will try to arrange a meeting with the Premier and the Minister going forward to see what their plans are entirely for this project. We're excited that the project will probably be going ahead in the next year or so. But, you know, having no work down here for all this length of time and not being mentioned much yesterday in that announcement about our capabilities up here.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think you're not getting mentioned?
Oh, I don't know. Well, we're not against the building trades by no means, because members in our Unifor Local also are members of the building trades, and that is a fantastic organization. And we're all about work for Newfoundland first, whatever. But we'd like to get a piece of the pie, obviously.
Last one for you. Would not that they should have to, but Newfoundlanders have traveled for work for years. I mean, if you don't get work there, will the people who are skilled, the tradespeople, move to wherever the work is within the province?
Oh, they have for years. We've had people, myself included, going back and forth to Alberta over the years in its heyday, and there's still people from the area going out there. We hope, we continue to have the work in the province and for other regions in the province.
All right. Appreciate your insight on all this, Rick. We'll, if we get a Newfoundland and Labrador government official, we'll ask about where Marystown is or if it is in their plans. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you very much. That's a great question. Have a nice day, sir.
All right, take care. That is Rick Farrell. He is the president of Unifor Local 20 in Marystown. If you're from Marystown, if you're a worker who is represented by Rick, give us a call. Give us your perspective on all of this, because I can understand totally why you'd want to have the opportunity to work in your community, particularly given, as Rick said, that has been the case before. All right, let's go to line 4. Tony, how you doing? You want to talk Beta Nord?
Yes, how are you, Tim?
Well, I'm not bad, my friend. It's been...
Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me? Got me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Tony. I'm doing all right.
Okay. Yes, I just heard Fred Hutton make no wonder you had trouble with your lines. I mean, hey, what did it, we had a lot of wind and everything blowing. But anyway, I seen what Fred's saying about how he was, complaining about what jobs did they start? I mean, no, we send tens of thousands of people out of the province because of no work, but we never had any come in. And I'll finish. And also, we mentioned before that when they were in power, I mean, he gave $21 million to the hotel down there, the Comfort Inn, where we could have bought for $3 million, and they leased it for 3 years. So by the time they had it finished, the contract was mostly up. Or the $83 million they gave the old Costco building warehouse, when we had all kinds of buildings here ourselves. And you could go on and on with this government. I mean, the millions of dollars, the tens of billions of dollars they wasted. And that one job, now they could create these thousands of jobs. And not only that, is the spin-offs for people. It's going to be invested now in the province. They're going to bring people home, like in housing. And you're going to see business starting up again because there's actually going to be work there for people. They're going to be investing in homes and cars and vehicles that are going to create more jobs. Like business, the ones that they shut down, about 50% of the business shut down across the province. And then you're going to see a lot of them open up now. And so, I mean, that's the biggest thing. All this money that's going to come into this province because of this new did what they announced yesterday. So I mean, for Fred to get on, the only thing is wrong with him. He's upset because they never done nothing themselves. I mean, you had
just on that, Tony. Listen, hopefully Beta Nord lives up to all the promises and hope that the Premier has for it, that we all have for it. And I think, to be fair to Fred, he also said, the government does want, or the opposition, who was the government, do want to see the project to go ahead. I mean, they had the same, you're right, they had, a whole bunch of promises and opportunities that they saw coming with Churchill Falls through the MOU, and both are arguably in the same state. Neither is real yet at this point, though the argument I heard the Premier make yesterday, and I think people in the industry tend to agree with him, is, you know what, we're 90% there. Well, let's see if we get there. The only other thing I would add, and you and I both know this because you're an astute political watcher, governments of all types over the years in Newfoundland and Labrador have promised things and promised magnificence, and sometimes they've delivered, but more often than not they haven't. But hey, you have at it.
Yes, well, the last time the PC government was in there, they ended up, I mean, the professionals that they brought in here, about 168 people, they went, and as nurses was graduating, they were hired. Right now they weren't. Mm-hmm. I mean, we went from right back to where we were before, back in 2003, when the Conservative took over. Then we had health care that you had to wait 3 or 4 years to go in for knee surgery or hip surgery. When they got in, the hired professionals that you only had to wait weeks. And now they're right back to where we started again. The thousands of people died. I mean, it's unheard of that waiting to get in to see professionals and getting surgery and all this. I mean, that's what they brought. We were 180,000 people without a doctor. Never heard tell it before. And the same thing with, like all the jobs that was created under the party that now the Liberals went right back to where they were about 20 years ago. So, I mean, this is what's going on here. And for Fred, I mean, they could have had this all done, but they didn't because they couldn't give it away. So they wouldn't do it. I mean, and he's talking about the MOU about Churchill Falls, but they had in the House. There's not hardly a question that was asked, that was answered. There's no every question was asked. You went in the huddle. It was like watching a football game. There was no answer whatsoever. It's like, it was unreal the way they got on. I mean, and they said when they were going in that this was going to go ahead anyway. So what was the point of going in there and having a debate when they already had their mind made up saying this was a done deal, this was going to go ahead? So there was and they never give no information out. Not once.
But does that make it acceptable? Sorry, Tony, I was just going to ask you this. Does that mean it's okay for Premier Wakeham, who, according to the Liberals, according to them, said in a leadership race he'd have a debate? Does that make it okay for Tony Wakeham not to have a debate because the Liberals didn't really manage the debate? What do you think about that?
Well, you had no way there to give a question. To me right now, they're going to have all kinds of questions today answered. Mm-hmm. And look, you imagine now 4 months into this, and they already got this deal pretty much done. And this is only the beginning. You're going to see all kinds of jobs coming up that they're going to sign. I mean, the same thing with the contracts now with the unions and everything. Seems like it's going really good. And, with everything, you're going to see everything turned around. There's not going to be no layoffs. There are only going to be jobs created. And this is going to turn Newfoundland and Labrador around, something that the Liberals destroyed. It took them 10 years to destroy. And within 4 months, you get this big announcement. And like I said, there's only the small things to come. How big is that is? You're going to have people coming home. You're going to have jobs created. You got a future for people, young people, to go back to school and actually have something to look forward to. Because under Liberals, we lost all kinds of professionals, doctors and health professionals and other professionals left the problem because there was no jobs. So right now we're going to so we got a great future. We're only 4 months in. You can imagine now, and give them a year or two.
All right, we'll talk. Go ahead, Tony. We have 30 more seconds. Go ahead.
Yeah. Next time Frank is on the line, wait till the last call because you won't have no trouble with the lines after that. You never had no trouble now since he got off.
All right, Tony. Always good to talk to you. Take care, man.
Bye. Have a good one. Bye.
All right. Fred's driving the calls. I'll take it, according to Tony. And Tony, as you know, very proud, strong PC supporter. That doesn't diminish his opinion, but helps inform where it comes from. All right. Last break on the open line today. Back with more of your calls. I hope we got time for one or two of them in the next segment. Back in a moment.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back. Last 8 or 9 minutes of the show. The lines are open if anybody has a last comment they would like to make. Beta Nord has been the focus today for sure. We seemingly have had a range of calls that have been overly appreciative and happy that Beta Nord is in its current state. Important to remember, again, it's not a final decision to proceed. The Premier did, to his credit, say that yesterday. We have had the Sierra Club on earlier. They did make the point, look, wrong way to go. We should be focusing on alternative energy. Is this the time to be doing this? We have tried, and she wasn't available to us today, but we'll see if we can get her on tomorrow. Dr. Angela Carter, who has been long an advocate of alternative energy sources and lessening our dependence on oil, would love to get Angela's perspective, so we will pursue her for tomorrow. She simply was just tied up in other things today. Did hear interesting, Rick Farrell a few moments ago. You just heard him, the Unifor lead, the president of the Unifor local in Marystown, raising the point of what might be in it for his members. Perhaps in time we will hear more of that. Oh, look, we've got another call on Beta Nord. So there you go. Before I go to Jack, I do want to update you on the Brier scores. Brad Gujou has won. He's beaten PEI by a score of 12-3, so he remains undefeated. And Nathan Young is currently behind Saskatchewan 8-6 in the ninth end. And Brad Jacobs, he's won as well. So both Brad Gujou and Brad Jacobs are undefeated. Jack, you're going to get probably the last word. What's on your mind about Beta Nord?
How you this morning, Tim?
I am okay. How are you?
Oh, not too bad. Beta Nord, yes, I think is a great announcement. It's going to create jobs and there's going to be money for the province and that. But I got another little beef. Like the government previous, they're talking about, they're giving out rebates for changing from oil to electric, mini splits, heat pumps, and all kinds of rebates being offered, basically to get clear of oil. I mean, where have our royalties been coming from this last 20 years? They've been coming from oil. That's where it's been coming from.
There's no doubt, and it's still the biggest. Sorry, Jack. I was going to say it's still the biggest driver of revenue to the province. I mean, I think even Premier Wakeham, though he hasn't talked about it yet to the same degree, has spoken about alternative energy, and we do have to get there. But yeah, let's not kid ourselves. A lot of the things that are paying for rebates and breaks are from the revenues we get from the oil industry.
Yeah, but a lot of these rebates that are being offered, like the $22,000 to change from an oil furnace to electric furnace, or to change over to a heat pump and that. And I mean, they're trying to do away with the oil. I mean, you and I both know that oil is always going to be around. They're never going to do away with it. They're talking about electric vehicles and stuff like that. I can't see that happening. I mean, oil is going to be around for a long, long while, and I hope it do. Because, like I said, that's where the province is getting all their money from for the last 20 years. And now with this Bay du Nord, they're going to get royalties from that and create money for the province and jobs for the province. So, I don't even know why they'd consider trying to do away with oil. If it's probably because of the environment, yes. I mean, but if things are done right, the environment will be fine.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a whole school of thought that says there's different technologies that can be used, and now environmentalists will say those technologies aren't where they need to be. Things like carbon capture and the like, they're doing a lot of that in Alberta. Alberta, of course, like Newfoundland and Labrador, wants its oil industry to be on full throttle, but even Alberta has moved towards more technological investments in managing greenhouse gas emissions. Got to ask you this, Jack, before I let you go. What makes you believe that Bay du Nord will deliver on its potential? Because we have heard, and it sounds like you've paid attention to Newfoundland politics for a long time, that that sun will shine and the have-not will be no more for a long time. What makes you believe this time we're on track?
Well, I mean, to me, there is positive there. Yes, there's going to be negativity there, and people are going to find it, and people are going to find the positives of that. But at least it's something to look forward to. Yes, if they got a bid on the top sides and stuff like that, so be it. But I mean, at least there's something for the province right now. Apart from that, what do we have? The MOU, which is a memorandum of understanding, and we don't know what's going to become of that. But at least we got this project now to move forward with, and hopefully create jobs for apprentices, and have some money coming in for the province and stuff like that. As regards to windmills and that, I mean, that's gone by the wayside. We're not up to par for electric vehicles. We don't have enough charging stations. Electric vehicles are way more expensive until they comes down in prices. Only the rich can afford them. So until they come down in price, I mean, electric vehicles, like I said, we don't have the charging stations. The vehicles are not up to scratch with regards to getting long distance drives out of them. And once that happens, well then yes, I can see electric vehicles coming out more. But I mean, as regards to oil is going to be around forever. They're not going to do away with oil, and I hope they never do, because it creates jobs, it creates money for the province, and I can only see things positive about it. And why can't we have both? Why can't we have oil and electric?
Yep.
We had it for years anyway.
Yeah, and certainly that seems to be where a lot of political leadership is now, because there's a huge opportunity for Canada right now with everything that's happening in the world, with the fact that, particularly with our oil in Newfoundland and Labrador, it apparently emits less greenhouse gas. So there is lots of positive in front of us. All right, Jack, anything else you want to say before I let you go?
No, that's it for now. You have a good day, and I hope you don't get too much snow.
Yeah, well said. All right, Jack. Thank you very much. Well, there you go. A full show, almost on. Take care, sir.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. So, again, I would say 90% of our calls very supportive of Beta Nord. I don't know if they're being managed or not. They used to be in the old days when people would set up calls, whether they are or they're not. At least people are enthusiastic, those that were in support of it. I would like to see if there are other voices out there. It's a safe place here to talk about that. I did notice in the comments Jack's made, and I've heard this more often, people are recognizing that, we do need the oil, but we do also need to make sure we accept the realities of climate change and the like, and alternative energies. They can coexist, according to the views of many callers. Certainly they do coexist now. How will they coexist in the future? We'll watch all of that. Tomorrow we'll see what the latest is on Beta Nord, what has developed over the course of the day, what's happened in the House of Assembly. Will there be a public debate? Will we learn anything more about budget dates and the like? The Wacom government, as I said, very busily flooding the zone with things that are seemingly winning public approval. Will that continue? They're in their early days. Thank you to everybody who called in today. Thank you for joining us on our harrowing adventure through technology trauma. Particular thanks to Beth. She was a rock star today. Greg Smith as well. All the VOCM engineering team. Tomorrow, even if it takes tin cans and a string, we'll make it happen for you. I'm Tim Powers, and that's Open Line for today. Back tomorrow with more.